Now, the other driver, another driver of muscle hypertrophy is mechanical tension, right? So the total amount of weight, the stress that's on those joints when you're doing it, right? And so with that in mind, if you're going super slow, the amount of tension that you're able to deliver is not nearly as much if you are trying to lift it faster from the bottom. You think about it, if somebody's doing a really heavy squat, or they're doing a really heavy bench press, or they're doing a really heavy deadlift, they might be, shaking and going really slow, but they're not purposely lifting the weight really slow. The weight is so heavy that they have to go slow. Hey guys, Aaron Kubitz, personal trainer, functional aesthetics EC, helping average guys perform better inside and outside the gym. So today I want to touch a little bit on the topic of rep speed and form. So about 10 years ago, and even before that, a very common theme was that you should leave your ego at the door, and the way this term came about was due to the common tendency of men in particular to want to just go in the gym and just start slinging around as much weight as they possibly can, right? Irregardless of the form you're doing. And so a lot of times you can develop injuries, you can tear muscles, different things like that, and it is suboptimal for building bigger muscles, building stronger muscles in the long run, right? Yeah, if you can just go and hoss something into the back of your pickup truck, that's fine, but unless you train appropriately, you're never going to be able to lift more than that amount of weight that you're lifting, because you are relying on your already strong muscles and you're missing the muscles that are weak, okay? And so if you don't train through the full range of motion, if you don't train those weak areas, if you don't train with the proper form, you are not going to progress, and you're going to be, or if you do progress, it's going to be suboptimal, and you are going to set yourself up for injuries and a lot of frustration down the road. Now, fast forward 10 years later, here in 2024, we have almost the form Nazis, right? So people have been harping on this thing about leave your ego at the door, lift with proper form for so long now that most people are aware of this. And so what will often happen online now is that people will be like overly critical of people's form. And the funny thing is like if you go back and you look at a lot of these pro bodybuilders and stuff, some of them had kind of relatively atrocious form. So, and I'm not really going to get into that too much, right? What I do want to focus on is that what's more important than specifics, like the precise way that you are doing the lift, is do you feel the stimulus in the muscles that you are intending to feel them in, right? Because even just slight tweaks in the way that you do an exercise can make a big difference in where you're feeling it, right? And so you have to start first and foremost, what is the primary goal of why I am doing this exercise, and do I feel that I'm getting that desired stimulus when I'm doing that? Okay, so if we go and we look at a very common exercise like a barbell curl, right? One of the things if you want a much more science, I'm just going to give you a very simplistic, analogous way to conceptualize this, right? But if you want a much more science-based approach to this, without getting too far down the rabbit hole of all this exercise science and everything, a good overview for the people who would like to read the science, right, is a book called The Science and Development of Muscular Hypertrophy by Dr. Brad Schoenfeld, right? And so in there he's going to show you anything from how does the weight, the amount of weight on the bar influence muscle growth, how does the amount of reps, what's the optimal amount of reps, what's the optimal amount of rest periods, what is the optimal frequency, what is the optimal training volume, what is the optimal, exercise pairings, diet, and then rep speed, right? So one thing that was also very popular back when I was in high school, a lot of people would talk about, if you want to build more muscle, you need to do really super slow reps, right? And that's going to increase the time under tension, and so you're going to build more muscle, right? And actually, if you go and you read the studies in that book, it shows that the optimal rep speed, so up and down, for building muscle is somewhere between 2 and 6 seconds, okay? And actually that the faster one, 2 seconds, is more optimal for building more muscle. And so one of the reasons I think this could be is actually because having to do with if you are purposefully slowing down the concentric, or the one where you're actually lifting the weight up, right? If you're purposely slowing that down, what's going to be happening is that you are fatiguing the muscle more than you are actually, so much so that it's not able to exert as much force, right? You're turning into a exercise in endurance rather than an exercise in strength. And so and why that matters is because one of the other drivers of muscle growth, aside from total amount of weight that you're lifting in a session, right? So volume is weight times sets times reps times the amount of exercise you're doing. So the total amount of weight that you lift in a workout is the key driver of how big your muscles grow. So in other words, if you do more work, you're going to build more muscle, provided you are also getting enough nutrition to be able to support the amount of work that you're doing. Now, the other driver, another driver of muscle hypertrophy is mechanical tension, right? So the total amount of weight, the stress that's on those joints when you're doing it, right? And so with that in mind, if you're going super slow, the amount of tension that you're able to deliver is not nearly as much if you are trying to lift it faster from the bottom. You think about it, if somebody's doing a really heavy squat, or they're doing a really heavy bench press, or they're doing a really heavy deadlift, they might be, shaking and going really slow, but they're not purposely lifting the weight really slow. The weight is so heavy that they have to go slow. Okay, so now what about the eccentric portion, right? There is some benefit to going a little bit slower, which I'll get into later. But in general, as long as the weight is going slower than the rate of gravity and the speed of gravity, you should be fine. Okay? Now, so this brings us to how to perform the rep, right? So you might have seen guys in the gym, right? And they've got way too much weight on there, and so they're lifting it like this, right? And they're using their back and all that stuff to get it up there, right? But there's not much added, and as we talked about before, going purposely really slow to lift that weight up, and then really slow down, according to the science, does not improve the growth of the size of the muscle. Now, when we talk about the eccentric component that I was talking about before, this is where it can make sense to cheat the reps, but you still have to control it at one point in the rep range, right? So, for example, if you're doing pull-ups and you get stuck, or you can't even do one pull-up, the common way to get over a hurdle in your a plateau in your ability to do pull-ups, or to build your ability to do pull-ups, is to increase training volume, right? Because if you can't do a pull-up, it's greater than your 1 rep max. And to build the muscle and the strength, you need more volume. And so since you can't even do one, you can't even do enough reps to increase your strength by doing pull-ups. So what do we have to do? Well, you could start by hanging from the bar, right? And then once you've hung from the bar for a while, just the isometric hold, right? And then you can do the isometric hold at the top, right? You just hold your chin over the bar. And then when you start getting tired, you try to lower yourself down as slow as you can, right? And that's going to increase that overload on the eccentric component. So the same thing if you're doing a barbell curl, you can cheat it up and then lower it down nice and slow under control, okay? And that is a good way to, if you have been stuck at the same weights for a while, to break out of the rut, because we know that the eccentric portion of the lift, or you're lowering down, is the stronger portion of the lift, right? And so to break out of that plateau, to increase more mechanical tension, and to be able to lift more weight for higher reps eventually, is a good way to break through that. So hopefully this makes sense. Hopefully this clears up some of your misconceptions you might have about purposely doing like extremely slow reps and stuff like that. Now I will say the last thing, the one possible benefit of this, and then I'll tell you also where I might include it, is another driver of muscle growth is metabolic stress, right? And that is where you're doing something for a long time and metabolic waste products build up within the muscle, and because you're not allowing the muscle to relax, you're kind of just pooling in the muscle there, right? And so you get stuff like lactic acid and all this stuff just pooling up inside the muscle, and that can help to stimulate some of the muscle cells in there responsible for, like your satellite cells and stuff, responsible for increasing muscular growth, right? And so how I would incorporate this is if the majority of the time you're just doing the regular 1 second up, 1 second down, 1 second up, maybe 2 seconds down, right? Just steady, controlled reps, right? Do that the majority of the time. And then from time to time, go and try to lift heavier stuff, right? And then after a while though, you'll notice that you're not continuing to get stronger by lifting the heavy stuff, and your joints might start to be aching and stuff from this continual onslaught of heavy loads, right? So then what you want to do is spend a little bit of time backing off, and this is when you would get lighter weight and just really pump it up and do really slower reps and stuff to just really pump up that muscle a lot, build up those metabolic byproducts, get more oxygen, more blood flow and stuff going into there, and that can help you to build a little bit more muscle, okay? And then after a period of doing this, go back to, maybe do some of that, and then do some light, just full range of motion reps, just to clear all those byproducts out of there once you're done, and that's a good way to do it. But otherwise, I would say spend the majority of your time, moderate weight, moderate reps, and a relatively quick up and down speed, about the speed that you can breathe. So just like that. All right, guys, if you like the video, go ahead and hit the like button. If you'd like to see more content related to design of workouts for building muscle, losing body fat, how to improve your performance for sports, and how to avoid getting injuries, and if you do get injuries, how to work around those injuries, and consider subscribing to the channel by hitting the button in the lower right-hand corner of the screen. We'll see you all next time for more health and fitness.